I guess I am live now. Can anyone confirm if audio and everything is fine before I get started? So, today I will be discussing the problems in the reverse order because I also want to participate in lead code biweekly contest. And due to time crunch, will be discussing these problems only for the first 45 minutes. So, can anyone confirm if the audio and everything is fine before I get started? Okay, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everyone. I will start from the last problem today. And Mhm. So the last problem says you are given a sequence A1 to N of length N. Answer the following Q queries. The ith query is as followed. Find the sum of elements among AL, AL plus 1 up to AR that are not greater than XI. Here you need to answer queries online. That is, only after you answer the current query is the next query revealed. And then some way of encoding is there. So what we have been asked is we are given an array. We are given an array A1, A2, AL, AR up till AN. And then we are given three integers L, R, and X. We have to take subarray from AL to AR. Find all the numbers which are less than equal to X. Let's say those numbers are AL plus 5, A, AL plus 10, and let's say AR minus 5. And then we have to print the sum of these numbers. And what we have been told is instead of just three integers L, R, and X, we are given Q such pairs and we have to find the answers for each of them one at a time. And only after we answer a particular triplet, we would be able to find the next triplet. So let's first try to simplify it. Instead of taking AL to AR, let's find the answer for AL to AR. Numbers which are less than equal to X, their sum. And then subtract it from A1 to AL minus 1. The idea is, let's say if there is any number common in them, then we would add it here and then we would subtract it here. And now once you look at it, there are multiple ways to do it, but only one of them will be optimal. One way to do it is merge sort tree. And maintain a Fenwick tree in each node. Also notice that the numbers are up to 1e9. So to reduce them to this range, you will have to also do a coordinate compression for it. You will also need coordinate compression for it. And I will share the prerequisite, my final solution was coordinate compression. Plus persistent segment tree. And I will share this prerequisite. You can just prefix some. Oh, you are right, Aditya. We can also do instead of maintaining Fenwick tree in each node, we can maintain a prefix sum as well. And then we can try to binary search on each node to find the particular answer. So those also works. this is what I did, but there are many ways to do this problem. And like looking at the constraint, to me it looked like 2e5. So like some solution with time complexity, I believe n log square per query will also pass, and n log square and pre-processing. But I went ahead with coordinate compression. So like my overall time complexity was big of log n per query and big of n log n pre-processing. And like if you want to read about and if you want to learn more about persistent segment tree, like this is the blog you should read for it. Like I will also paste this in the chat. And like these were the main ideas for the problem G. And like the problem F is an interesting one. Like if you look at it, it says you are given n integers and we have to find the number of triplets I, j and k that satisfies following condition. Everything is between 1 to n and ai into aj is equal to ak. So and now like if you look at this code, like you can see like one brute force idea would be run 3 for loops and then check if ai into aj equal to ak and sub plus plus, but it is too slow. Hi Nikita Skaivsky. So the next idea would be like we can first maintain a frequency. We can also maintain a frequency map for it. Long int. Then first we do for a auto x in a. And then instead of third loop, instead of running this third loop, we can count the number of elements which are present in that our frequency array. And but even this code will be too slow because numbers are up to 10 to the power 1000. Like I am discussing f right now, and I will go in reverse order g, f, c and everything because I want to even also participate in lead code contest today. So like if there is not enough time, I can skip the easiest problem today. So like the next idea I had was, instead of maintaining these numbers, I will choose one mod and I will calculate an array bi which is ai percent mod. Now if ai into aj is equal to ak, then this also implies that ai percent mod into aj mod taken mod and overall mod would be equal to ak. Like if the product of two numbers is equal, yeah, it's something like has, then their value taken modulo will also be equal. But the reverse is not true. Which is if ai something mod into aj something mod and overall mod is equal to ak taken value equal, then it's not true. Like there can be cases where ai into aj is not equal to ak. Like, and simple example would be if let's say we have taken mod equal to 10 to the power 9 plus 7, then 2 into 3 is 6, but 2 into 3 taken mod is also equal to mod plus 6 taken mod. So like if product of two numbers is equal, then their values taken mod and product will also be equal, but the reverse is not true. So the next idea I did was I generated around 15-20 random prime numbers and I calculated answer for each of them, and at last I took the minimum of them. Like if you know my solution, like you can definitely generate test cases against it, but because Adcoder tests on all the solutions in the starting, so there is no way they can predict all the prime numbers I would be using in my code. And let's say if my solution fails because one of the prime, then I can always change the primes which I am using in my code. And if my primes are up to 1 in 9, then they will have to add around 1 in 8 test cases to add a test case against each such prime numbers. Yeah, like the solution is silly because anything over here might pass. Like that's not a perfect solution, but yeah, like that's what was passing from me. So like I will go through the code once and then I will move to problemming. I have taken everything as input. I have generated random primes. Like one way to generate prime is like you pick a number in that range and then check if it's prime or not. If it's not prime, then try again. Otherwise, return that number. And the idea is in the numbers from 1 to n divided by log n prime numbers are there. So on average, this loop will terminate in log n numbers. Or Nikita says like they also compared length before prime multiplying numbers. Yeah, you can do that as well. Like the main idea is anything in that solution will pass. So now I am, after generating primes, I am iterating on all the primes. Here I am maintaining frequency array, and here I am finding the value of bi mod s by iterating on the string multiplied by 10 and everything. Frequency map, and then two for loops. Find the value of their product mod, and if it exists, and add it in the answer and take it minimum with the overall answers. And at last print. Yeah. So I will move to problem enough. Problem E says smooth subsequence. Yeah, like if I am generating random prime numbers, then if same solution which fails once can pass again. Or I can always increase the number of primes I am generating and do it. Yeah, and moving, like I won't call it a luck-based problem because it needs intuition to see like a solution like this will definitely pass and then code. So problem is says you are given a sequence A1 up to AN of Langton. Find the maximum length of subsequence of A such that absolute difference between any two adjacent terms is at most n. A subsequence of sequence A is the sequence that can be obtained by deleting 0 or more elements from A and arranging the remaining elements in their original order. So like let's look at the sample again. Like first sample says like difference of any two numbers should be at max 2, and it claims like if you take 3, 5 and 1, that is invalid because difference between 5 and 1 is 4, which is greater than 2. You cannot take 3, 5 and 2 as well because difference between 5 and 2 is more than 2. But you can always take 3, 1 and 2 because difference between each number is less than equal to 2. So like instead of solving this problem, let's first look at one solution of finding longest increasing sequence over here. Like when we try to find longest increasing sequence, what we can do is, let's say we also know that all the numbers are in range 1 to n. we are given an array A where every number is between 1 to n, and we have to find longest increasing sequence. So like one possible way to do is we can maintain a segment tree of 1 to n. Each element is 0 at first, and then we iterate on it. And like basically the main idea is, I will try to simplify it a bit further. That's called DPI. There's length of longest increasing sequence among A1 to AI such that the last value is j. Then what you can do is, if you compare the length of sequences which ends, if you add one more number to it, then any new sequence either remains with an endpoint in this only, or the new endpoint would be AI plus 1 only. So if you know dp I and j, then dp I plus 1 j, where j is not equal to AI plus 1, would be dp I comma j. Because when you look at if you try to append the element at index I plus 1 to all the sequences you have right now, if you append it, then the new last number would be AI plus 1. Otherwise the number remains same, like sequence remains same. And dp I plus 1 AI plus 1 is 1 plus maximum of dpi 1 until AI. The idea here is you look at all the sequences which ends at 1, 2 up to AI, take maximum length of them, and you add the current number to at the back of them. So now once you know this solution, you can also solve it from 2-dimensional array to 1-dimensional array. Now the idea remains same. Like instead of maintaining a 2-dimensional array, you can also maintain dp j, and you start from I equal to 1 to n, and when you iterate one value of this loop, like your dpj value would be the value of, like let's call it dp2. So dp2 value would be dpi to j, and because we know that everything until except j not equal to ai remains same, so you can try to find the max value of dp2 1 until ai plus 1, add plus 1 to it, and then you can assign dp2 ai plus 1 equal to 1 plus max. Like this is one algorithm for finding like longest increasing sequence. There are other ways to do it as well. And now if you want to change it to the problem, like max difference is d, then what you know is, like you can do similarly, such that instead of finding the max from 1 until ai plus 1, you can find max of range ai plus 1 minus d to ai plus 1 up till d. And like that was the idea for it. And like instead of, you can also maintain this dp values in a segment tree so that you can find this maximum faster. Like the code is short, like I will try to show my code over here, and then I can take doubts in this problem again. if something is not clear. First, I took X as input because numbers were up to 5v5. I have created a segment tree, max segment tree. Like each index contains the maximum of everything in that range and the identity is 0. Max segment tree, then I am iterating from for X in the array. And I am finding the maximum value in the previous array so far from X minus D up to X plus D. And then I am setting the current DP value as 1 plus the maximum I got. Like if there are any, and at last take maximum of all the things where everything is adding. Like any questions on this one before I move to problem D? So like if there are no questions on E, then I will try to move to problem D now. Like the code is short because I had a segment tree template over here. Okay, moving to problem D. It says synchronized players. There is an n cross n grid where each cell is either empty or contains an obstacles. Let ij denote the cell at ith row from the top and jth column from the left. There are also two players on distinct empty cells of the grid. The information about cell is given as n strings of length n in the following format. If the jth character of the ith string is p, then ij cell is empty with the player in it. If jth character of ith string is at full stop, then ijth character is an empty cell without a player. If jth character of ith cell is hash, then the ith character contains an obstacle. No, okay. Shreyas is asking if we find the DP value from segment tree which is highest, how do we make sure the value is the difference is less than equal to key? The idea was whenever one iteration of this loop ends, then the DP value contains maximum sequence of all the indexes which I have processed so far, such that the last value is 2, 4, 5. If I am looking at fifth index, then the last value is 5. If I am looking at the 100th index, then the length of longest sequence which ends at 100. So if I want to find the length of longest sequence which ends at x, then I have to take the maximum in range of x minus d up to x plus d. So like that was the idea. And now for the problem B, find the minimum number of moves required to bring two players to the same cell by repeating the following operation. If it is impossible to bring two players to the same cell by repeating operations, print -1. Choose one of the four directions, up, down, left, and right. Then each player attempts to move to adjacent cell in that direction. Each player moves if the destination cell exists and is empty, and does not move otherwise. So the idea over here is like you have two players in a grid. You try to move both of them to the left, right, up or down, any direction you want. If the player moves, if the place where we are moving the player exists and is empty, then the player moves there. Otherwise, that place would be out of the grid, so the player does not move, stays at its own place. Or there is an obstacle using hash over there. In that case, also the player does not move over there. And what we have been asked is we have to find the minimum number of moves we should play so that both of the players reach on the same cell. So like the main idea for this problem I had was BFS, but like BFS on what? Like let's call a cell R1 C1 R2 C2 such that the minimum distance moves you have to make from moves such that the first player is at R1 C1 and the second player is at R2 C2, so that the next player, both of them moves to the same position. Or the other way around I had was like I can do a Dijkstra type of solution where I have some starting configuration like S SR1 SC1 SR2 SC2. Let's say these are the starting four cells. The first player is at index SR1 SC1 and the second player is at index SR2 SC2. To minimum number of moves required to move both of them to first player to R1 C1 and the second player to R2 C2. And if we can find this minimum value for all the possible values of R1 C1 R2 C2, then I can take the minimum of all the indexes where R1 is equal to R2 and C1 is equal to C2. And like let's say if the first player is at index U1 V1, U1 is the row and V1 is the column, and U2 V2. If I try to move them up, then my new coordinate would be U1 minus 1 V1 and new coordinate would be U2 minus 1 V2. And then I can check if this is outside the grid or this contains and has. In that case, the player would remain at this coordinate. So like I can write a function move U1 V1 and direction, which returns me the new coordinate if I try to move a player from U1 V1 up to the new direction. Okay, what is R1 and C1? Like R1 and C1 is the coordinate of the first player where the player is at, and R2 is the coordinate of the second player where the coordinate is at. So, and what I am trying to maintain is like this is my initial state SR1 SC1 and SR2 SC2, the coordinates of the two players in the starting, and I am trying to find the minimum distance, minimum number of moves I have to make to move the first player to R1 C1 and the second player to R2 C2. And if I am able to find this for all the possible values of R1 C1 R2 C2, then I would be able to find my final answer as well. Like I can iterate on all the distinct values of R1 C1 and take minimum of them. And like to do that, I have first written one helper method move, which takes coordinate U1 V1 and the direction. Like if the player is at coordinate U1 V1, like row is U1 and coordinate is V1, and my direction is either up, down, left, right, then it returns me the new coordinate, where it would be checking if the cell goes outside the grid, then the player will definitely not move and remain. It will return U1 V1 only. And if the new coordinate has a hash on it, in that case also the function will return me the current coordinate only. Otherwise the function will return me the updated coordinate. And after we have done this, then you can visualize the whole thing as a graph over here. Like you are at some coordinate R1 C1 R2 C2 and you have four possible directions, and you will reach a new pair of cells on each coordinate, which can be same as existing one as well. And you can try to now do a BFS on this graph. And like after that I will try to jump on to my code, and like if there are some questions I can take them again to clarify some things. Like instead of maintaining four coordinate, I am trying to maintain one integer first in my implementation. Like I have compressed all the states such that like R1 into n cube plus C1 into n square plus R2 into n plus C2. I am maintaining all of my states using an integer like this, so that I don't have to maintain a four-dimensional array for it, rather one-dimensional works for me. And like let's first look at the move function. It takes the direction in which I am moving, and it takes current coordinate, like which is r into n plus c, something like that. So I first look at x and y, and then I try to find the new coordinate moving in that direction. Like there are four directions. Either y coordinate increases, y coordinate decreases, x coordinate increases, x coordinate decreases. And if the new direction is in the grid and it contains hash, then return the current coordinate only. Or like I can probably write it in a better way. If I move out of the grid, if after moving to the new coordinate, then return the current coordinate as only. Otherwise, return me the updated coordinate. Like this is one function which takes the current position of one of the players and the direction in which we want to move them. Now the idea is we first find the coordinates of both of the players, and I am encoding in the state st. And then I am pushing them into the queue, and distance denotes like current distance so far. So yes, Rusen, you are right. Like I have a graph where for each position of player 1 and player 2, there are four neighboring nodes denoting to the direction we want to move them. And then I'm trying to do a BFS on it until I reach a node where both of them are equal nodes over there. Now I'm putting them into a queue. Like this is the BFS function. Like find the element at the front of queue. Like if you want to increase the distance, which I am denoting by TP1, increase it. Like the idea is BFS only, like the way you code it over here. Here, like I am trying to denote that my distance has increased by 1. Otherwise, if I have reached a point with equal coordinates, then print the current distance in the BFS. Otherwise, iterate on all the directions. Find the new coordinate of the first player if you move it in that direction. Find the new coordinate of the second player. Like here, some assert just to ensure that I don't move into an invalid direction. If the position of both of the players are equal, then I can also print distance plus 1, although this is not required because I have maintained here as well. And if I have already put them into the queue or I have already visited those two coordinates, then do continue. Otherwise, mark it as visited and put it into the queue again. Like that was the main idea. Like any questions on this one before I move to problem C? So I will move to problem C then. Yes, in a kind of we are brute forcing on each direction on each step. Like there are four possible directions over here. So if you visualize like complete thing as a graph where you have a pair of current coordinate of the indexes, then you have four possible directions where a player can move into. And one of the such pair would be your starting coordinate. And you want to do a BFS to reach to a coordinate where both the positions are equal. No, like it won't get TLE because like I am doing a BFS instead of a TLE land. If you look at the coordinates, like n is up to 60. So number of starting positions for each player is 360. So the total number of pair of positions is 360 into 360, which is around 1 is 6 over here. And you can definitely do a BFS in a graph which has around 1 e5 nodes and like 4 times the number of edges as the number of directions. So the idea is you have an implicit graph and you have to do a BFS on it. If you just try to brute force without making anything visited and everything, then that will definitely get TL. So like I will move to problem C then. Problem C says perfect bus. A bus is in operations. The number of passengers on bus is always non-negative integer. At some point in time, the bus has 0 or more passengers and it has n stops since then. At the ith stop, the number of passengers increases by AI. Here AI can be negative, meaning that the number of passengers decreases by minus AI. And also no passenger got on or off the bus other than the stops. And we have to find the minimum possible current number of passengers on the bus that is consistent with the given information. And now you have some examples as well. Like you have some number of passengers initially. Like in that case, it's claiming like if you take the initial number of passengers as 2, then 3 people move in after the first stop, total people would be 5. Then 5 people can drop out, total people would be 0. And then 7 people move in, total people would be 7 then. And then 4 people move out. Then at last you will have 3 people. Instead of initial 2, you can also try to check if you can have initial 1, only 1 passenger initially. If you have 1 passenger initially, then after the first stop you will have 4 passengers. And then after the next stop you will have minus 1 passenger, which is not possible. So you cannot start with 1 passenger. But you can also start with 3 passengers. In that case, after the first bus stop you will have 6 passengers. And now if 5 people move out, remaining you would have 1 passenger. And then 7 people move in, you will have 8 passenger. And then 4 people move out, you will have 4 passenger. And if you start with 2, then your sequence will look like this. And what we have been asked is we have to find the minimum possible number of people we can have at last. If you start with 2, minimum would be 3. If you start with 3, minimum final value is 4. If you start with 1, it's not possible. Okay, so like now what we can do is we can first assume that there are 0 people in the starting. And we can try to compute everything over here. So if we have 0, like in the example, it would look like 0. 3 minus 2, 5, 1. Once you have this, you can look at the minimum value in this array. Let's say if the minimum value is positive. In that case, you can assume that in starting you have only 0 passengers. But let's say if minimum value is negative minus 2 in this case. So what you can do is you can assume that there are 2 people in the starting and add 2 to the everything. And if minimum value is minus 5, then you can assume that there are 5 people in the starting. And if you add 5 to everything, then the minimum value will change to 0. And if the minimum value is, let's say, 10, then you can not definitely assume that there are minus 10 people in the starting. You have to assume that there are 0 people in the starting, and you can find like do the things like that only. So like this is one way to solve this problem. The other is you start by assuming that there are 0 people in the train, and whenever you reach a negative number, you change it back to 0 by assuming that these many extra peoples are there. So like 3 minus 5, let's say you have 1 minus 6 7, like these are the values given in the input. One way is you go start with 0, 3 minus 2 minus 1 minus 7 0. Then you can assume that like there are 7 people in the starting, and your array would look like 7 10 5 5 6 0 7. Or the other way is you start with 0, and whenever anything becomes negative you make it 0 again by assuming like these many extra peoples are there you haven't counted for. So in that case, it would be 0 3 minus 5 becomes minus 2. Assume that you have 0 people so far. Then 1 becomes 1, minus 6 becomes minus 5 again. You assume it is 0, and then you have 7 people. Like both of them will give the same value over here. Like that was my idea for it. And are there any questions on this problem? So like I have 3 minutes and I have only AB remaining. So I will try to hurry up, take input, read all the integers, and mark answer equal to max of 0 and answer plus 1, and at last print answer. Yes, you are Russian, you are right. Like it is somewhat confusing because they called current number of passenger as the number of passengers after last stop. Like at one point I was also consumed, like are they expecting me to print the minimum number of passenger that should be in starting or something like that. So like that was the idea. And like I will take problem A first. Like problem A says like you are given a string S, you have to split it with all the full stops and print the starting with the last full stop. So it was more or less an implementation problem. Like one way to do it would be you maintain the string which you want to print, and whenever you find a full stop you make it empty. So if x equal to dot, t equal to empty string, otherwise t plus equal to x, and at last print t. Like this was the code for this one. And like B is an implementation heavy problem. Like you have to implement things over there rather than anything. Like if you look at my screencast, which I will upload after the lead code contest, and it took me around 10-15 minutes to code on B. Generally that does not happen. Like let's look at the problem. Like there is a grid with h rows, w columns. Initially all cells are painted white. Let ij denote the cell at ith column from the top and jth column from the left. The grid is considered toroid. It says if you are in I comma 1 and if you move right, then you will reach cell I comma w. And if you are at 1 comma j and if you want to move down, you will move to h comma j. And it says if the current cell is painted white, paint it black and rotate by 90 degree and move forward one cell in the direction he is facing. Otherwise repaint the cell white and rotate clockwise and move one cell direction. So it's basically saying if you are on white cell, paint it black and move 90 degree clockwise. Or if you are on black cell, paint it white and move 90 degree counterclockwise. And then you have to print the final grid after moving n number of times. And it was more of an implementation problem. Like I believe if you read the examples, you will be like here the person is as one, like he paints white to black and move to the right. And then if you after this he reaches this position again and things like. So I will directly jump onto my code and then I will call it a day. Yeah, like the question was annoying, approve. Like here I am maintaining the directions, like in the clockwise directions. So if you want to move to the clockwise, move to the next direction. If you want to move 90 degree anti-clockwise, move one direction to the left. And then I am maintaining the current index as well. initially everything is white. If the current cell is white, move one direction to the right and mark current cell as black. Otherwise, you can subtract one or add three. Everything works in modulo 4. You change the direction to the left and mark current cell as white. And like now you are maintaining this dir. Like you add whatever direction you are, you move one step towards it and take everything modulo n and m, and at last print the final string. So like thanks everyone for joining. Like the problem B was definitely annoying, and I will try to end the stream for today. And I will paste some persistent segment tree related problem. Like how do you deal with such annoying questions? Like the idea is I know it's annoying, but I know how to code it. So the best way is just code it and move on. And like there is no solution to it. You don't have, like, you can either solve it or you can decide to not solve it. And if you do not solve it, then if the contest is rated, then you may get penalized by the rating point. If it's unrated, just move on and have a peace of mind if you don't want to code it. And because I wanted to discuss problems here, so I went ahead and coded it. So thanks everyone for joining. Let's meet after the lead code contest.